The administration is coming hard for judges, which is unprecedented. Let's break that down. Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and this is The Breakdown. If you enjoy the content on this channel, don't keep us a secret. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and tell a friend. So, this is a bit of a good news, bad news. Actually, no, it's all bad news. But let me start with two instances of judges that have been attacked by this administration. Now, of course, there's a plethora of times when we know the president has been very insulting of judges and talking a lot of smack, but this has gone beyond that. And now they're actually slapping the cuffs on judges. Now, let's talk about how unprecedented that is, because normally judges get arrested for things like bribery or murder or things like that. It is very rare for a judge to get arrested. I think one of the most high-profile examples folks can think of in recent history is the Cash for Kids scandal that was going on, where in Pennsylvania, a judge was basically had a deal going with the basically like a private prison for kids, and basically he was getting money every time he was sending a kid to prison. That's the kind of things we're used to judges getting arrested for, not doing their job. So here's the deal. In Massachusetts, this is the good news-ish, in Massachusetts, charges were dropped against Judge Shelly Richmond Joseph and her court officer, basically her bailiff, Wesley McGregor. So here's what happened. She was charged with obstruction of justice, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and obstructing a federal proceeding for allegedly helping an undocumented immigrant evade ICE. Now, this is something that happened back in 2018, where she had a case in front of her. It was a criminal case, and the prosecutor and the defense attorney came sidebar, and they were like, listen, we're still trying to work out this case, et cetera, but the defendant is undocumented. And the defense attorney said, listen, I think ICE is downstairs, about to snatch up my client. And so the judge goes off the record, which means this discussion was not recorded, but it was about a minute-long discussion back and forth about well, what are we going to do? So then what happens is that the judge was like, all right, have the person, the defendant, go through a back entrance, and basically they were able to go downstairs and they went out of the back door and went on their way. So now, of course, ICE was not able to capture this person, and they were all freaking out. So as a result, charges were filed against her. Now, what ended up happening is the charges just got dropped in exchange for her basically now facing some sort of sanctions or investigation from the body that supervises and also can remove judges in the state of Massachusetts. So it basically became back to becoming a state level issue. Because again, remember, the feds don't have any authority over state level judges. Yeah, they can file charges, but they can't remove a state level judge from the bench, because again, either they're elected by the people in their jurisdiction or they've been appointed by the governor of the state. So the feds can't just come in and snatch a judge off the bench. But they're doing everything they can to try to dismantle the legitimacy of the judiciary, because remember, 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, judiciary, they're all supposed to function independently. And the judiciary is basically like, listen, we have a case in front of us that we need to finish. We need to figure out if this person's guilty, not guilty. If they're guilty, they need to serve a sentence or pay restitution or whatever the case may be. And then y'all can deal with the immigration stuff. But we have crimes and stuff that are happening right now. So basically now she's going to face some sort of consequences from the Massachusetts, basically judicial board. And in all likelihood, it's not going to be much of anything, because at the time, Massachusetts was really billing itself as a sanctuary state. In other words, they weren't going to let ICE just come in and disrupt the different proceedings they have going on. And of course, because they look at that as unnecessary interference. And number 2, it's interfering with the administration of justice in their particular jurisdiction. So good news, bad news in terms of the charges are being dropped. I don't think anything is going to happen to her from a state level. I think that she'll be able to keep her seat on the bench. If anything, maybe they'll give her like a very weak reprimand with no real teeth, but we'll see what happens there. But now in a more pressing one, most recently, we have Judge Hannah Dugan, who was arrested in Milwaukee for obstructing a federal agency and concealing a wanted individual. So this all went down this week where she confronted federal agents who were trying to arrest a defendant in her courtroom. And she was like, no, we're not going to do this because, again, I have proceedings going on. I need to handle my case and y'all can deal with your stuff at another point in time. So they ended up arresting her and she was released on her own recognizance. But of course, Kash Patel, the FBI director, had to post some foolishness on X, made sure to have a photo up there of her doing the perp walk, just an added way to degrade her, even though she is a duly appointed elected judge in her jurisdiction. So at the end of the day, the whole concern was that this was a domestic violence case, and again, the case was not resolved yet. The person was not found guilty or not guilty, and they wanted the case to be able to proceed. What ended up happening is that while the undocumented man was able to go through a different exit, I still found him. They chased him on the street. They caught him. But the judge's biggest beef was like, listen, you guys are coming here trying to arrest somebody in my courtroom with an administrative warrant, which is different than a judicial warrant. So a judicial warrant is one that's issued by a judge where they read to see is there probable cause, et cetera, et cetera. They sign off on it. And then the cops now have the ability, or agents have the ability, to go and get someone. This is the type of warrant that gives access to someone's house. Basically like, hey, we can break down the door because we have this judicial warrant. In an administrative warrant, it's not as powerful as a judicial warrant. So note to self, you don't have to let agents into your house if they have administrative warrant. Not the same level of power. They can't kick down your door with an administrative warrant. They can do so with a judicial warrant. So that was her beef. Like, listen, you guys be messing up all the time as, hello, we're seeing American citizens get deported and all this foolishness. So she's like, I don't trust that you guys didn't make errors in this, and I'm not going to let you come here and just take somebody willy-nilly. So this is now building up to be a showdown. Like I said, she's been charged, she's been released, so she's not in custody or anything like that. I believe she's on leave at this point, and another judge is taking over her docket. So at least, justice is still proceeding in that way, and people don't have to wait a super long time for their case to be resolved just because she's no longer in the mix. But again, this is really scary in terms of the independence of the judiciary, because again, the reason why we have separate branches is to have checks and balances on each other. And if you keep just attacking one to delegitimize it and basically put it out of existence and have a bunch of minions that are just, that's no longer a democracy. So there's that. Secondly, there's the public safety aspect, because listen, if you are someone who is a victim of a crime or witnessed a crime and you're undocumented, are you going to show up to court to testify if you're worried that ICE is going to come snatch you up? If you are a victim of domestic violence, let's say, are you going to report your abuser, or are you going to keep your mouth shut because you don't want to be deported? And so you get to be abused in silence over and over again. Or, any other crime, any type of situation, a murder, a carjacking, whatever the case may be. You have witnesses that are undocumented. They're not going to say anything, which then makes the prosecution case weaker, which then allows somebody who could be really violent and horrible get away with it and continue to victimize people. For an administration that claims to be so tough on crime and we want to get these violent criminals, y'all are setting this up to make sure that violent criminals get away with it, because again, you can't pick and choose who your victims and witnesses are going to be. However, violent defendants can, and they will pick and choose people that they know are undocumented because they know they can commit the crime and get away with it because the people aren't going to come forward. So how is that making our streets safer? How is that making our community safer? Yeah, it's not. So you've got all of that going on. And also, too, you think about the loss of revenue, because when you think about minor things like traffic tickets or fines or things like that, that you could just go to the courthouse, boom, drop your cash off your check and keep it moving. Now, folks who are undocumented aren't going to come in and resolve those things, which means it's less money coming into the county, state coffers. Again, no one is benefiting from this. So, very disturbing. We'll keep you updated on these cases and what ends up happening with this. But again, very, very disturbing because we're attacking judges now. Who's next? I'm Melba Pearson, and this was The Breakdown. If you enjoy this content, please like, comment, subscribe, and tell a friend, because we are the resistance. Take care.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.